Today, 360,000 newborns will be added to the human population. Also today, over 40 million trees will be cut down globally. As human population grows by the day, the wild species that form critical support for the existence of man are steadily shrinking. In Kenya, 50 square kilometers of forests is lost every year. That's equivalent to a football pitch multiplied 500 times over. Now this loss, the Forest Report of 2018 says, leads to an annual reduction in water availability of up to 62 million cubic meters. Now that's enough water to serve Nairobi, a city of over 4 million people, sufficiently for 3 months. No rationing and no dry tops. In the highlands, where most of the 2% closed canopy forests are left, forests are cleared in search of raw timber and agricultural land.
Before you reach Narok, there are big farms, wheat farms. If you look at those wheat farms, one thing is evident, that whoever is doing the farming there has ensured that not a single tree exists. It's just an open, monotonous field of wheat. If you move to the sugar belt in Moroni or Nzoia or whatever, you'll also witness the same thing, which means the land is not protected in any way from any climate dynamics.
The impact of years of deforestation is felt in sky and land. Weather patterns are unreliable and crop productivity bears evidence of an imbalanced ecosystem and depleted soil nutrients. Sediment influx from the rivers in the Rift Valley draining into the Lake Victoria alone are estimated to cost farmers about 4 billion shillings worth of lost soil annually. The rivers that flow from the Mau complex in the Rift Valley tell the story of a bleeding land. With fewer trees left to hold the soil, the red earth is eroded into the rivers. Just how far are we from the threshold of destruction?
We have been swinging from a disaster to a disaster. When we have rains, as a country we should be able to enjoy that we have a good harvest and perhaps do the issue of food security. But you have seen when we have rains, we have floods. The floods gone, then we have drought. Forests are part of the major aspect that can mitigate us or provide shock absorbers from the extreme weather conditions. So we have no choice. If we have to exist in the future in a stable environment, then we have to really conserve our forests.
The Forest Report of 2018 estimates Kenya's forest cover at 7.4% of total landmass, and now the government wants to increase that to 10% by 2022.
3, 4.
But this is something whose possibility will rely heavily on the buy-in of citizens. Aside from the massive human and financial resource outlay that is necessary to make this happen, much of the land is in private hands, and people will have to be sensitized and agree to planting trees on their farms.
We must consider tree as part of us. That is how close we must bring this narrative to the Kenyan people. If we have to change the perception and the behavior, that's the only way we're going to be able to move, not even 10%. We can even move to 20 or 30% if people themselves own up and realize that without trees, they are not surviving. And for us to survive, we need the trees.
Today, at the realization of the need to protect the country's forests and the impact of deforestation, more trees are being planted by different people and organizations across the country. The challenge, however, remains to ensure that trees planted actually survive.
It's not about how many trees are being planted, it's about how many of these trees grow. Because most of these, for instance, the private sector, you find people are engaging into the corporate social responsibilities and doing tree planting like in forest. But how many of these corporates actually go back to ensure that their trees grow? You know, you can plant 1 million trees, for instance, in Ngong forest. You can plant 1 million trees in the Mau forest. But if in the next 3 and 4 years to come, only 10% will have survived, then we'll just be wasting our resources on claiming that we're increasing our forest cover. So it's achievable, but we need to do it the right way.
So what exactly is the right way? According to Elizabeth Wanjiru, the founder of the Green Generation Initiative, a community-based organization that is counting on schools to raise a new generation of environmentalists, one way is through an initiative dubbed Adopt a Tree.
So we decided to start up a campaign that we dubbed Adopt a Tree campaign, whose main focus or aim was to ensure that trees survive. And number two, the main focus of this Adopt a Tree campaign was to also nurture young people into conservation. So what we do is that we identify schools that we work with, and then we ensure that every child in the schools that we go to plants, waters, nurtures, and adopts a tree up to maturity. So this has been so successful of late because most of the trees that we've been planting in the past until now, we are able to account for the survival rate, which is now at 98%.
On this day in Nairobi, where celebrations of the annual Youth Day are underway, she has found an opportunity to plant a few more trees and influence a few more young people.
And I also hope these trees are going to grow because it's an institution, and if they could have a way of doing maybe the drip irrigation, can just get...
Like Elizabeth, a majority of Kenyans understand the importance of reforestation. However, not many people have her kind of knowledge that would enable them to do this successfully in their localities. In some instances, farmers have chosen wrong tree species for their specific areas, and also there is a lack of diversification, which is important for a more balanced ecosystem.
For example, there are trees that are adapted to the dry conditions. Trees that you take in a wet area, they will not grow. Yeah? Other trees, you take them from the high altitude, very cold areas, you take them to the warm areas, they will not grow. So in that case, we have to know what species are we putting where so that the tree is adapted and we expect it to grow in most vigorous way. But if you put it in the wrong condition, like most people Kenyans have done, they have taken trees from the coast, they have taken to Mount Kenya, the tree does not die, but never grows because it's not adapted to the conditions.
And if there are areas that are affected by termites, you need to get pre-treatment for anti-termites so that the termites do not eat up the trees. That is the challenge we have in most of these regions, that the trees don't survive because of the termites attack. You must make sure they are watered at the right time, especially early in the morning or in the evenings. When you water them during the day, the roots get burned with the heat and the water. So you need to also water them at the right times.
There are more trees being planted by many more people every day, but demand for timber is also growing by the day, driven by both commercial and domestic needs. After just 1 year of implementing the government freeze on logging in public forests, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers Timber Sector Survey of 2018 suggests that imports of finished timber products was growing 22%, while local manufacture of the same was growing just 7%, a clear indication that the market is heavily dependent on government estates for raw timber. Realizing the 10% forest cover will then require much more private sector action than ever before.
And my message to the sawmillers who we have worked with before and for many years, from their own aspect, and when they're developing their business model, investing millions and billions of money to set up sawmill, they should ask themselves, are we building our sustainability basically based and purely based on the wood from the public forest? That is a wrong narrative. It's a wrong foundation. They should themselves say, if I'm investing in this sawmill, fine, if I get wood from the government forest, well and good, but I gonna now do what you call outgrower scheme, supporting farmers to grow tree on their farm, and with the promise that this industry will take up that wood for processing. This is what is happening in other countries. We must reduce the pressure from the government estates.
We have got farmers here who have got huge tracts of land, and they are not using, they are trying to grow maize, they are trying to grow other crops, but the inputs are too high, and in that case they don't get the benefits. So these are the people we would like to work with so that they can also start now putting plantations whereby they'll get the proper technical advice in terms of the species that they select, how they manage those tree species on the farm, and at what point should they harvest. If we can start getting, rather than just depending on the forest, rather than depending on the public forest, and we start seeing more and more people going into plantations, private plantations, we would expect to see in the long run the dependency on the public land will go down.
May the youth also be fruitful.
Even as different stakeholders join in the drive to 10% by 2022, there is a need to have a synchronized record of trees planted by different players and their survival rates to provide accurate data on progress.
We do not have data available to the public to tell us that last year we planted this number of trees and this is what has survived. The only thing we keep getting from the government and government institutions is a whole new rates of forest cover percentages that we don't know where they're deriving them from. So this is something I think they need to address. You know, you can't just tell us that we are now at 7.5% or we are now at 6.9% or we are now at 10.1%, and along the way and along the process you've not been sharing maybe the survival rate of the trees that have been planted. You know, we need to track the progress.
For the Kenya Forest Service estates where we are planting our trees, that data is available. But remember, this is a collaborative effort. You have communities planting as well. You have farmers planting on their farmland. So it is. I cannot say today that we have an elaborate system to monitor all the initiatives that we are undertaking. But this is something that we are thinking as Kenya Forest Service and actually the Ministry of Environment to be able to put a nationwide monitoring system so that all these initiatives can be recorded and registered so that we know in every particular time how many seedlings have been planted and how many have been able to survive. And not only that, what type of tree seedlings have been planted.
The protection, conservation and expansion of forest cover is a protection of our very survival. And there have been plausible efforts by the government, including the directive by the President, that all public entities commit 10% of their CSR budgets to tree planting activities. And of course, the suggestion or the proposal by Treasury to reduce import duty on raw timber from 10% to 0. But beyond 2022, and the target to raise Kenya's tree cover to 10% of total landmass, the country now needs longer horizon strategies to attain and maintain a sustainable forestry sector.